Annie was a British journalist who made her career identifying the mechanical reality behind ghost stories. To her, every haunting was a solvable equation of optical illusions, equipment failure, or psychological stress. If she couldn't measure it with a sensor, it didn't exist. Her latest investigation brought her to the dense historical center of London, targeting one of the capital's most infamous locations. She arrived with the intention of dismantling the site's reputation, using nothing but modern technology and the predictable laws of physics. The environment for this study was the Langham Hotel. Its ornate pillars and vaulted ceilings project an aura of established, wealthy order, a setting that feels entirely disconnected from the macabre. The lore of room 333 centers on this Victorian couple. During their honeymoon, the doctor murdered his wife inside the room before taking his own life, leaving behind a story of a spirit that supposedly never checked out. Annie's plan was to spend one night in the room, recording every second of the experience to prove once and for all that the doctor's spirit was a fabrication. Her experiment was predicated on a single assumption, that the room would continue to operate according to measurable, observable reality. That assumption was tested at the check-in desk. Instead of a modern digital keycard, the staff handed her an archaic brass key, a heavy, tarnished object that felt like a relic of the hotel's 19th century origins. On the third floor, the atmosphere shifted. The bustling lobby was replaced by empty corridors and fading Victorian paint. The floorboards groaned under the weight of unwashed carpets, and the dim lamps cast shadows that seemed to pool in the corners. As she reached for the cold brass handle of room 333, the test began, a conflict between modern investigative logic and a space that seemed increasingly resistant to it. Phase 1 focused on environmental isolation. Annie meticulously mapped the room, setting up interlocking cones of surveillance that left no corner unmonitored. Every square inch was covered by a camera lens or a high-sensitivity microphone. The environment countered her tech by attacking her physical comfort. Despite it being November, the room temperature dropped so sharply that Annie was forced to abandon her monitors to light the fireplace. This physical distraction worked. As the fire caught, a rhythmic knocking at the heavy wooden door broke her concentration, pulling her focus away from her data feeds. This led to Phase 2, psychological sabotage. A butler appeared at the door claiming to have room service. It was a logistical impossibility. Annie had ordered nothing since her sandwich arrived hours earlier. When the butler lifted the silver cloche, the tray held a recreation of Annie's own severed head. She blinked, and the corridor was empty. She immediately scrambled to her recording equipment to verify the incident, looking for the digital footprint of the encounter. The cameras had failed. Every memory card was corrupted, and the audio files contained only the sound of her own scream. Her primary weapons, data and evidence, had been neutralized. By 1 a.m., the investigation entered Phase 3, physical domination. The air grew freezing, and Annie discovered the room's heavy door was now immovably jammed. In the bathroom, she looked into the mirror and saw the rotting visage of the doctor standing directly behind her. As the lights began a violent rhythmic flicker, the figure lunged. In the brief bursts of yellow light, Annie saw the doctor's hands reach for her throat. When hotel security finally breached the door after hearing the screams, the scene they encountered was devoid of ghosts or Victorian intruders. Annie was alone. She was in the middle of a violent, self-inflicted assault, repeatedly smashing her face into the jagged remains of the bathroom mirror. The staff recognized the pattern immediately. Decades earlier, the doctor's wife had been found in that exact position, her injuries identical to the ones Annie was now inflicting on herself. This specific, repeating trauma is what investigators call a residual haunting loop. This loop effectively forces a precise alignment between the two eras. The haunting didn't just target Annie's senses, it bypassed them to seize control of her motor functions. Annie had been compelled to flawlessly recreate the specific physical mechanics of a murder committed over a century ago. Annie survived the night, but she never returned to the Langham, and she never published her documentary. The empirical methods she spent years perfecting had failed to account for a room that could override her own will. We build shields of technology and logic to feel secure in our environment, but in places saturated by historical violence, those shields can prove to be entirely hollow.